to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, Hoops fans? Back at it with another New York Knicks video. Going to try to get a lot more Knicks content up as the offseason is now full in effect, and I'll definitely have some videos talking about potential free agents for the New York Knicks, some potential draft picks for the New York Knicks as we're waiting on the NBA draft lottery. But I wanted to get a video up. I read an interesting article on Knicks blog this morning regarding the new coach, Tom Thibodeau, and naturally a lot of New York fans, specifically Knicks fans, are very down on the hire, and it's incredibly understandable. The New York Knicks seem to disappoint us no matter what they do, and I will not get excited over this hire for the simple reason, like I said in my video, the Knicks have had so many failed head coaches, but I'm certainly not going to say that this was a bad hire before I see Tom Thibodeau coach for the New York Knicks. It's not like this guy doesn't have a track record, right? The guy's definitely had success throughout the league, and he's had some failures, but that's the case for a lot of coaches, and we hope that Tom Thibodeau could change the culture here, get the players to play good defense, and get this team headed in the right direction. But I read an article on KnicksBlog.com in which Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson talked about the hire. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from a biased perspective, but both of them, they're analysts on ESPN. It's their job to analyze hires and be fair. But Jeff Van Gundy, of course, has a connection to Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau coached under Jeff Van Gundy, both with the New York Knicks and the Houston Rockets. Mark Jackson played for the New York Knicks and is a former coach of the Golden State Warriors. And him and Jeff Van Gundy, of course, have a working relationship. So you could certainly argue that it's coming from a biased perspective, but I like some of the things that Jeff Van Gundy had to say, and maybe it will give you guys a little bit more of a positive outlook with this hire with Tom Thibodeau. So I wanted to jump into some of the quotes of what Jeff Van Gundy had to say and kind of give my opinion on it. First quote I wanted to bring up here from Van Gundy was this: Leon Rose did a great job identifying many capable coaches and then picking one in Tom that's absolutely elite. Van Gundy said, the roster needs a lot of work. You win with great players. They need to fortify the roster over the next couple of years. But if everyone is patient and realistic and allows Tom to work, they will reap the benefit because he's exceptional in every way. A coach is an important piece, but all coaches would tell you that the players are more important. And there's no doubt about it, especially in basketball, where one player could turn around the fortunes of a team. I think a coach in football is probably more important than basketball. You look at a guy like Bill Belichick, gets the most out of his players. But I do think Thibodeau will instill a work ethic with these players with a defensive-first mentality. The only question, like I said in my video, is will it deter players from coming over in free agency, which Van Gundy later went on to talk about in terms of coaching styles. The next thing I want to pull up for you guys was this. This is Mark Jackson. Added Jackson. Obviously, it was a great hire. Tom Thibodeau is a great basketball mind, extremely successful, has done it before. Knowing him, obviously playing for him as an assistant coach with Jeff in New York and in Houston, I have tremendous respect for him. He's in a great situation. I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job of turning things around, and I couldn't be happier for him. And of course, Mark Jackson's a guy that a lot of New York Knicks fans probably wanted the Knicks to take a good, hard, strong look at. I remember, a couple of years ago, I wanted them to potentially look into hiring Mark Jackson as the head coach. He's had success as a head coach as well. He goes on to say great things about Thibodeau. This is Van Gundy now talking about the job that Thibodeau did with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He took over the worst team in basketball in Minnesota, and he snapped the 13-year playoff drought. I think you want a coach that's both patient and impatient, said Van Gundy, who will call five seeding games on ESPN in 3 days alongside Mike Breen. Mark Jackson is the perfect guy to talk to because of the incredible job he did in Golden State, bringing that club back to the playoffs. I think what Mark did in Golden State was he elevated the confidence level. He elevated the commitment to defense. I think Tom has kind of been tasked with the same thing. The roster is not his issue. They've got to do something about getting better players, right? But as they build that roster, he's got to build their confidence. Give them a plan that allows them to be put in the best position to be individually successful and team-wise be more successful, but also be demanding, saying that we got to guard on a night-in, night-out basis. We got to pass it on a nightly basis, and we got to play harder than people on a nightly basis. And yeah, if the Knicks are going to win games with the talent that's on this team, most nights they're going to have to win by out-hustling their opponents. And I do think that he will bring that mentality to the New York Knicks. And I like the fact that he basically says, listen, you got to be patient, but at the same time, you got to try to get the most out of the players that are on your roster. And I look at guys like Frank Ntilikina, I look at guys like Dotson, I look at guys like Mitch Robinson. I do think those types of players will buy into this system, and I do think that Thibodeau will get those guys to play very hard on a night in, night out basis. Next thing I wanted to pull up for you guys was this quote. Added Jackson, you don't want to be too patient because that becomes contagious in a negative sense. And what you don't want to be patient on is the exact things that coaches just finished talking about. The things that put you in a position to win. The realistic point is they have to upgrade their talent. But you can defend, you can compete, you can play hard. And there's no way that you can be patient about accepting anything short of great effort, energy, and compassion on both sides of the floor. And those things will put you in a position to change the culture and begin to see results. And Tibbs is more than qualified. He's proven it. And I'm sure he's going to put them in a position to see brighter days. So Mark Jackson goes on to continue to say very encouraging things about the job that Inks Thibodeau will do with the Knicks. And then Van Gundy just kind of wrapped it up by saying this. Even when I was coaching in the NBA, and I think it's always been said, players are hard. And this is him talking about, the reputation that Thibodeau has as being hard on the players and maybe scaring players away from coming to the team. I think that does a disservice to players. Some players are hard to coach, and it usually is about not wanting to work or not wanting to commit to the sacrifice that it takes to win at a high level. But I don't think players have changed nearly as much as organizations and coaches have changed. You can't demand less of players and then complain that they're willing to do less at times. I find it does a disservice to the players. I think good players in any era want to be challenged and pushed to be the best, and they want to play on teams of significance. This idea that Tom doesn't know how to pace his team is one of the great slanders that has been perpetuated by the media on a coach. And I think all coaches have to learn to adapt and adjust to the slights and not fight them, because you could spend a lot of time trying to fight against some slanders, stuff that is said by really the unknowing. So Van Gundy kind of backs up Thibodeau there, where he says that he thinks it's unfair what people say about Thibodeau and how he runs players into the ground. The best players want to be, pushed to the limits. You look at a guy like Michael Jordan. He definitely exemplifies that. Now, not every player is like Michael Jordan, but at the end of the day, if Thibodeau's a great coach and he's going to get the most out of his players, you want players that want to be pushed to come to the New York Knicks. So if there's some free agents that he might scare because of fear that they're going to be pushed too hard, well, I think what Van Gundy's saying there is, well, you probably don't want those players. Thibodeau's definitely a motivator. He's a guy that's going to get a lot out of the talent that the New York Knicks offer, and I'm happy that he's here. But like I said, I'm not going to get overly excited until I see results. I've seen Hall of Fame coaches come in here and fail miserably. And a lot of that, like we always say, has to do with James Dolan. And as of now, James Dolan isn't going anywhere. I'm a New York Met fan, and it looks like the Mets are going to sell the team. I don't expect Dolan to sell that team anytime soon. So, we're going to have to live with what we got. The one thing I will say, the New York Knicks have seemingly been patient in the way that they've built this basketball team, and I hope they continue that. But I thought it was a very good point that both Mark Jackson and Van Gundy brought up with, you can't get too patient. You have to try to see some development and try to win some basketball games. Try to bring a bit of a winning culture to the New York Knicks with these players. Give them some hope and some motivation as they're starting to improve throughout their careers. And I think the guys that are strong defensive minds, guys like Mitchell Robinson, guys like Frank Ntilikina, I do think that those guys really could take a huge step forward under a guy like Tom Thibodeau, a guy that demands defense. And like I said in the last video, if they could find an offensive-minded coach to come along and be the assistant, a guy like Mike Woodson, that I think would be a perfect marriage. But until the Knicks bring in talent like Van Gundy said and like Mark Jackson said in the draft, you're not going to see much. You cannot miss on these first-round picks. As of now, it looks like Kevin Knox was a miss. Obviously, we hope he gets better. He shot like 37% last year. I recognize he's still very young. He's 21 years old, and maybe he will improve. And hopefully he does. He definitely has talent. But the Knicks cannot miss on these picks. If you don't bring in talent, bottom line is you're not going to be able to attract talent. Free agents don't want to come to a team with nobodies. So until the Knicks continue to draft well and bring in players of significance, you're not going to get free agents no matter who the coach is. So the Knicks, it starts this year. You have to hit on that draft pick. RJ Barrett needs to continue to improve, and maybe we'll be headed in the right direction by 2021 with free agency, and maybe we'll get a couple of big fishes. But I'm not even worried about that until we see the players that are already on this team improve. And I do think a guy like Tom Thibodeau has the ability to get these guys to reach their full potential. Will he be able to do it? I don't know, but he's got a track record. Like I said, you look at guys on the Chicago Bulls, Jimmy Butler didn't have the highest expectations. Taj Gibson wasn't known as a great player. Noah wasn't known as a guy with great ability. He got the most out of those players. They won 62 games, and they were the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. So could Thibodeau, do a good job here? I think he could. I think we need to be patient. I think we need to give him a chance, and I think we can't jump down his throat. Hopefully we see some results year one. I think year two will be the true test when we start to bring in an influx of young talent and hopefully a couple of free agents to help Tom and the Knicks get back to where we want them to be, which is playoff basketball. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.